Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of Over Theologizing. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Joe, and today we will be talking about P90X.
Joe, that's SSPX. Stick around.
Yo, what up, Tyler?
Hello. We are back.
We are back.
It is good to see you.
It feels like it's been forever.
It does. It really does. And I mean, I guess I missed an episode.
Yeah, you left me on my own.
I heard you were
last
looking
time.
for me.
Yeah, I couldn't find you. I looked everywhere in this house, and you weren't here.
Well, so how's life been treating you, Joe?
Pretty good, man. My wife is 5 months pregnant and feeling it. Felt a baby kick for the first time the other day. That was pretty cool.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's good. And my youngest son and then my new youngest son will be beating each other up soon. That's going to happen. Yeah, as it should be. Yeah. What do you think? Is that you think pre-fall that would still be a thing? You think brothers would still wrestle and punch each other? Maybe not punch each other. Maybe that's too far.
I don't know. This is a good question to ask some people one day.
Yeah.
When we all meet the saints and whatnot.
Yeah. Ask Adam and Eve if they ever fought.
I'm sure they did. Specifically in the garden before the fall. That would be the question.
Yeah. Well, they definitely did, like, right in front. I'm sorry, I'm like stretching this out way too far, but this is over theologizing. This is what we do.
The big thing, and I kind of wanted to just get right to this. Joe, I have a guest.
Wait.
A surprise guest.
There's a guest here?
We have a guest today.
No, we don't.
And you might know him.
Oh. Is it Wes Huff?
It is not Wes Huff.
Dang it.
I'm sorry. I know we've been trying. It's your brother.
What?
Your brother's here.
No way. Jake?
Hello.
What?
How are you guys doing? Yeah, I was invited on. Thank you for having me.
That was a good bit. I like that bit.
It was so silly, but worth it.
Yeah, we can't. So now this is going to be a little bit inside baseball for you guys. We record our intro after the episode, and now we're going to have to not include the fact that we have my brother on in the intro. We didn't think about that. I didn't think about that before. Maybe you did.
I didn't think about it, but here we are, committed to the bit.
Yeah. Well, Jake, you are our first Roman Catholic. How does that feel?
It's an honor. It's a privilege.
Yeah. Well, we're going to solve the debate today. Roman Catholicism versus Protestantism is.
Oh dear, I was not prepared for that one. I prepared for a completely different topic.
That's how we get them.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, I guess.
Yeah. We'll turn this into a debate show another day, but today we are actually talking about a pretty interesting topic. And just so you know now, Jake, you kind of messed up because you are now our resident Roman Catholic correspondent. So any questions?
Our insider, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything goings on.
Yeah, you're our guy.
I've got the scoop. I've got it. Yep. It's fine.
So today, Tyler, I want you to introduce the topic, and I want you to ask the first question.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So if I remember correctly, the way that Joe kind of set me up here, he specifically told me, don't do any research.
Yep.
Go in blind. That way I can ask the questions that maybe other people wouldn't think if they already kind of know some of the background. So today we're going to be talking to you about the whole, what is it? St. Pius X.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I have that correct. The SPX debacle, controversy, whatever you want to call it. So can you explain it like I'm five? What is this controversy and what's going on?
Maybe talk about what the group is first.
Yeah, so I guess the very beginning, I'm an idiot on the internet. I'm not a
As are
canon
we.
lawyer. I'm not a
So you're in
theologian.
good company.
I'm just a random guy who has studied this to the best that I can. So um, that's kind of the perspective that going into this. If I misspeak, if I make mistakes, that's why.
Email him at no.
Yeah. Please direct all of your issues to Joe. He can deal with all
That's
of that.
overtheologizing@gmail.com.
Yep.
Yeah. So the very brief overview. The Society of St. Pius X took issue with some of the aspects of the Second Vatican Council. They took issue with some of the way that it was implemented, and they are trying to correct and respond to those particular aspects that they take issue with. That's about as much as I think you can boil it down and still have the gist of what's going on today.
Yeah. So, like, as someone that has some knowledge of Roman Catholicism, I think it would be helpful to maybe talk about a little bit of the change in Vatican II and why modern Catholics would have a problem with that, and maybe even some things that like the majority of Catholics would agree with them on.
Yeah. The Second Vatican Council was ultimately a response to what was happening culturally at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You've got expressive individualism. You've got the sexual revolution brought on by birth control and the invention of that pill. You've got liberation theology.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those are ideas that are becoming very ingrained, especially in Western culture. So the purpose of Vatican II was really to respond to what's happening in the culture.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to instruct on any heresies or anything like that. It wasn't a correction. Some councils are meant to correct. This one was meant to really respond pastorally and update teaching patterns. How do
more
we,
like internally?
How do we instruct in a way that the average person can understand today?
Right.
And it wasn't even meant to replace anything necessarily. It was, okay, we have these traditions, we have these dogmas and doctrines, what the church teaches and believes. We are expressing those in one way today. Is there another way that we could express those that would be as effective or more effective?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the history of what Vatican II was meant to address as well.
Yeah. And so do you have an idea when the society, we'll just call it SSPX for short, when SSPX kind of became predominant, when they started doing what they're doing?
So they were born in the mid 70s. I believe 1975 is when they were established.
Oh, that early.
Yes. So Vatican II ended in 1969, if I have my date correct. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I believe Vatican II ended in 1969. And then Pope Paul VI was the Pope at the time it ended.
Mm-hmm.
He put together a committee, a council that was supposed to implement the liturgical aspects of Vatican II. Mm. And these are the big things that the SSPX takes issue with, are the liturgical changes.
Yeah.
So those liturgical changes were brought in the early 70s. It took a couple years for them to evaluate the documents of Vatican II to draft up the. So, a little bit of terminology. We've got the old rite, or the traditional Latin Mass,
Mm-hmm.
and then we've got the Novus Ordo, the new order, the new
Mm-hmm.
rite. Um, all of the documents, all of the Roman Missal, the Liturgy of the Hours, which is a set of prayers that priests and nuns and some laity pray every day. We've got the rite of baptism, the rite of Christian burial. All of those had to be examined. All of those had to be rewritten.
Mm.
And so they took a couple. It took a couple of years to actually get all of that out, get that published, get that written.
Yeah.
Um, so that was around 1972 that the documents that Pope Paul VI analyzed the documents, made sure that there were no theological inconsistencies, no changes to the actual dogma or doctrine, and then he put his rubber stamp on. And then the society, as those changes are being rolled out at the lower levels, at the parishes,
Mm-hmm.
the originally the fraternity of St. Pius X was formed in 1975, I believe. So they started out as a fraternity of priests that wanted to preserve tradition. The ladies started to get involved and show interest, and then they became a society rather than a fraternity of priests.
Yeah. And how big, I don't know if there's like a exact number on it or anything, or if there's like a number of parishes or anything like that, but how prominent would you say that this society is?
Honestly, until maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah.
So until that point, at least, I mean, the average person probably didn't know about them.
Mm-hmm.
And now with this excommunication, obviously
Yeah.
they're in the news. And so it's a lot harder to ignore them.
Yeah.
We do have a SSPX. I'm not sure if they call themselves a chapel or a parish or what word they use to distinguish what their church is called, but we do have one that's about 20 minutes from where I live, so they're around.
Yeah.
I don't think they're super common at this point.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not as common as your mainline Catholic Church,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
So basically,
Yep.
the gist of this is going to be this is a group that's pushing to kind of return to a more traditional view on a lot of the liturgy and other aspects of the way church functions.
Yes, and it's especially in regards to the liturgy, but they also have so Vatican II saw the formation of conferences of bishops. You've got regional groups of bishops that can make decisions on behalf of the Pope. Now, certain issues will always escalate up to the Pope, but there are
Mm-hmm.
certain matters that don't necessarily need to. The bishops have the authority to handle those and deal with those.
Right.
So are you saying that they think that they shouldn't have?
They disagree with the way that the conferences of bishops were implemented. I don't necessarily know that they disagree with the idea of the conferences of bishops,
Gotcha.
but I think that they have too much authority, and they don't agree with how they came to be.
Yeah.
So there are other aspects like that. The liturgical changes are the biggest things, though.
Yeah. So we talked before, and you mentioned how they don't recognize the Pope.
I was actually
a
mistaken
true
on
Pope.
this.
Oh, okay.
They are not sedevacantists, which is a group that claims to operate under Catholicism, but they believe that the seat of St. Peter is empty.
Mhm.
They are not. I was mistaken
Gotcha.
on this. I did some more research and found that out.
Okay.
So they do believe in the authority of the Pope. They believe that the church is in a state of crisis, and they are responding to that state of crisis. So that's how they
Gotcha.
kind of go around direct orders from the Pope.
Yeah. it's very different from the Protestant Reformation, but it there's kind of like shadows of it at least. You know, when the reformers, they're called reformers for a reason because they weren't trying to wreck the church or anything. They were trying to reform the church and point it back to what, I mean, Tyler and I would say is biblical.
Right.
And
Well, and we've talked about this. There are aspects that the reformers absolutely had correct,
yeah,
like the selling of indulgences. That's been
yeah,
dealt with, and they were absolutely correct on this,
yeah,
even from a Catholic perspective. Like,
right. Well, and that kind of leads into like, are there some things with SSPX that maybe a lot of, because it seems like, I don't know if it's because of the previous pope being a little bit more liberal or if it's just because of a general direction in the church. Maybe you could talk about that too. But it seems like there's a lot of Catholics these days that are wanting the church to go into a more conservative direction.
yes, and the church. So the church, several popes recently have responded to that.
Hmm.
Um, so John Paul II was the pope that was dealing with this initially back in 1988. There was a group of their bishops that were excommunicated back then, or the group of their original bishops.
From
Um,
this same SSPX?
yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the brief history there: when they were a fraternity, they had a bishop that was in charge of them. He ordained four new bishops outside of the normal procedures. So he didn't have permission from John Paul II to ordain them. So
Gotcha.
at
Big no
that
no.
point, he and those four bishops were all excommunicated. But the priests of the society, the laity of the society, were left out. It was just those five. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
so, and the reason for that is just because they went around the direct order of the Pope. John Paul II told them, "You are not authorized to ordain these bishops," and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll talk more
so,
about that later.
yes, we'll get into that. Um, get me back on track. Remind me of your question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just asking like some things that SSPX kind of stands for that maybe a lot of mainline Catholics would agree with. And, like I said, it seems like a lot of modern Catholics are wanting the church to go in a more conservative direction.
Yeah, so that's where I was going with John Paul II. When he excommunicated them, he explicitly said both the traditional Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo, the new rite, are to
Mhm.
exist simultaneously. He called very clearly and very emphatically that the traditional Latin rite that they were so in love with must continue, and it
Mhm.
must be made. There must be allowances for this. Um, Benedict XVI, after him, stated that they must both continue, and there needs to be a marriage between the two. So the Novus Ordo should pull pieces from the traditional Latin rite, and it should
Mm.
evolve naturally, pulling those pieces. The traditional Latin rite needs to look at the Novus Ordo and see that there is some beauty that they could possibly incorporate, and they can
Mm.
evolve as well. So the church's stance is we need to be pastoral because number one, we've got the old rite, and we've got people that have fallen in love with this. This is what they grew up with. This is what they know. They understand this. This is how they were formed. And then we've got this new rite, and the situation is the same. We've got people that have fallen in love with this. This is what they grew up with. This is what they know. This is how they were informed.
Yeah.
Um, so the church wants both to exist together, separately, but they can form each other. And so some of the older things that have fallen away, um, there are churches that incorporate those into the new rite.
Gotcha. What? So we're talking about Latin Mass an awful lot. We have a lot of listeners that have no idea why a Catholic would want to go to a Latin Mass. So, yeah, you can just roll with that.
Yeah, and I can understand that because of the way that we grew up. We grew up outside of a Latin Mass parish. We grew up at a very contemporary parish, is what how I would describe
Yeah.
it.
Well, and like a lot of Protestants listen to the show. Probably not a ton of Catholics, and a lot of Protestants grew up Protestant. And a very common, I guess, charge against Catholics from Protestants would be, why would you want to have a service in a language you can't understand? So, yeah.
So the first note to address that, Latin is the language of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So there are debates among linguists about this, but I would argue that some say Latin is a dead language. I would argue that it's not, because the church still actively uses it. The church writes all of her documents in Latin.
Right.
It's a useful language to learn, but there's also a lot of beauty of all of our texts are translated in Latin or into Latin, and that Latin is viewed as the original. So if a pope writes a letter in Italian, that Italian letter is translated into Latin, and then that Latin text is what we run with. We translate from that Latin. We don't translate from the Italian.
Right.
So Latin is kind of it's the language that the church always goes back to.
Yeah.
And it's the language that we have been using since, I mean, before St. Jerome, but St. Jerome translated the Bible into Latin for us.
Yeah.
From Hebrew and Greek and Latin all mixed in together. He translated it all into one language, and that's our primary source that we take from at this point. So it's a language that's steeped in tradition. And it's, if you're looking at the linguistics, it's kind of the core of the church, the core language of the church.
Yeah. Yeah. So what other things other than having a Latin Mass, it seems like it's really interesting to me, and we talked about this before, because we just came off of having, would you say, the most liberal pope?
I would say so. Or liberal is a very politically charged term,
Right.
in the United States. So maybe progressive is a better term.
Yeah.
But
like theologically.
Whatever phrasing you want to use, I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm by no means trying to bash you by saying this, but some of the things he said, like telling a child that his unbelieving parent could be in heaven, or because and I think he said something about how Muslims can go to heaven or something crazy like that. I mean, definitely more theologically liberal. And then now you have what seems to be far more conservative pope, which is, I mean, I know several Catholics that were very happy about the pope that was chosen. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think he definitely leans right. Now the interesting thing is he has made very few statements, very few changes, because he's still trying to figure things out, and he's not responding to anything immediately.
Yeah.
But I would he, based off of his speeches, based off of what he said, what he's written, he does definitely seem to lean more right.
Yeah. So, do you think that the vast majority of mainline Roman Catholics like despise this group, or that they kind of agree with him a little bit?
I don't know about agree, but I would say that there is some sympathy.
Yeah.
They understand where the more traditional Catholics that know the situation, that understand Vatican II and the things that happened afterward, there's some sympathy. There's understanding of where they're coming from. Where they disagree is how they're going about it.
Yeah.
And some of there's some of the legalese that the society throws around that is also kind of hard to get behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Tyler, do you have any questions at this point?
Well, so I was kind of curious too, because obviously there was some stuff about the use of the traditional liturgy, but then there was some stuff about the doctrines of um, and kind of the stance of like ecumenicalism, which I have even my own opinions on ecumenicalism, um, just as a general rule for the church. So is that kind of like your big number two issue when dealing with the SSPX stuff?
Oh, I think he froze.
Oh,
So they
Oh, he's moving. Oh, there he is.
there we go.
You're
I might
back.
turn my
Oh,
camera off, but that might help.
yeah, a little more
I turned
bandwidth.
my camera off. I think that'll help. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Let's
Maybe
help me
not.
get back on track.
Oh,
I'm
there it
sorry.
is.
Okay,
I can hear you
so
guys.
obviously with Vatican II, there was an embrace of ecumenism or ecumenicalism. I'm not sure which would be the more
Are you
correct
saying
term.
by the group?
Well, so Vatican II
Oh, okay. Yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of what brought in
More ecumenical.
right,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and SSPX seems to be like pretty critical of that.
Yeah. So you're basically saying like in Vatican II, I guess the Vatican was more willing to bring in people of other faiths. Not bring in, but accept, I guess would be a
Right.
acceptable word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
the heart of Vatican II is the church's job is to get people to heaven. That's the function of the church, is to bring people to heaven, help them to understand God. And the way that is being approached is, let's bring in other faiths, let's talk about their stumbling blocks, and let's see if we can't help them understand why the church teaches this or that about their different stumbling blocks. So that's the way that it's meant to be manifest. I think you do have some level of mistreatment of that, or misunderstanding of that concept, where different bishops, maybe different priests, maybe different members of the lay faithful are preaching that, well, the church accepts everybody and
Right.
everybody
Right.
can go to heaven and it doesn't matter what you've done. Or so I think that the part of their response is, I don't think that they would outright disagree with, okay, let's have conversations over the stumbling blocks so that we can help to understand where each other is at, and so that we can minister to different groups more effectively. But I think that they disagree with like that concept of, well, we're all in this together. We can all make it to heaven, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, well, and it seems like, and I don't know, we've had conversations, maybe you disagree with this, but to me, from the Catholic's perspective, that seems to be more consistent, because if me, for example, I'm not attending to, according to the Vatican, any of the sacraments. I don't attend a mass. The communion that I have is not valid. I was baptized as an infant in a Catholic church, so I suppose that's valid. I was rebaptized though in a Baptist church. So I don't know. Maybe that's a contentious question, but it seems more consistent with Catholic theology, right?
I don't know. I don't know if I understand what
So
Well,
are
seems
you saying like
consistent.
Vatican II is more
no, I'm
consistent or
saying it seems
SSPX is more
like yeah,
consistent?
it seems like SSPX would be more consistent in being a little bit more exclusive.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's some sympathy when people study the movement,
Right.
is because it feels like their hearts are in the right place, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But the one big thing is you can't go against direct orders from the Pope. And
Right.
that's also so I don't think we've gotten into this yet. They are not heretics. They are not labeled as heretics at this point.
Right.
And they have
Right.
been so at least um, John Paul II and Benedict XVI have explicitly said this group is not a heretical group. They're a schismatic group. And the Code of Canon Law, which is church law, it governs um, it governs what we think of as when we think of law. Um, the Code of Canon Law is very explicit in the definitions of heresy, apostasy,
Hmm.
schismatic groups. It's very explicit in these definitions. So I think that is another important piece is they are not heretics. So nothing that they preach theologically is heretical or is in opposition. It's the disobedience to the Holy Father.
Yeah, and so would they? I mean, now that they've been excommunicated, would they now be? And we haven't talked about why yet. We'll get into that, but would they now be considered apostate?
I have not seen that label thrown around, but I have seen theologians debate whether or not that label does apply.
Yeah.
So I don't have a definitive answer. I don't know that there is a definitive answer at this point because things are still evolving, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there are also theologians that argue that they should be labeled as heretics because the natural end, if you follow out their thought processes, would tend to end in heresy.
Mm.
So
I'm
it's
kind of curious, just following along with Joe's question, because I feel like typically, typically in a Protestant tradition, like excommunicating someone, obviously, and I know in the Catholic tradition, it's a big deal too. Like obviously, the fact that it's making national news, beyond
yeah,
just church related stuff,
yeah.
um, like we would tend to kind of take this position of like by excommunicating somebody from the church, you're essentially saying that like they are not believers. They don't belong to the church any longer. They are no, essentially as good as heretics. Um, so I'm curious kind of how that differs.
Outside
You
the
know,
kingdom.
yeah,
Yes. So the
yeah, yeah.
Catholic the
Yeah.
Catholic definition is a little bit more. Excommunication is a pastoral action
Right.
in that the purpose is to so the purpose of formal excommunication is to inform a party that they have strayed from the Catholic Church and inform them of what needs to be done in order to bring them back in full communion. So excommunication in a Catholic sense, um, it's an action that an individual performs, and if you hear of like Pope Leo did not excommunicate this group, technically speaking, their actions excommunicated them and brought them outside of the Catholic Church. Pope Leo had a couple different groups form a letter to inform the group that they had been excommunicated.
Mm.
So it's a pastoral action meant to inform both that group and the wider church. Hey, these people have strayed from the church. Here's how they've strayed. Here's what they need to do to come back into communion.
Yeah, and it should be said, biblically speaking, excommunication's purpose. I couldn't find the verse. I was just trying to search for it real quick, but the whole purpose, I think it's Matthew 15 talks about it, and it says they're like Gentiles and tax collectors, which is to say they're outside of the faith. The point of excommunication is to say, hey, you're doing this, and if you continue unrepentantly, then you're going to hell. And the point is to say, hey, wake up, stop doing that, repent, and come back.
Yeah, and there's also
Right.
that aspect of in excuse me, in the gospel, Christ talks about the escalation of issues.
Mhm.
So you talk about it amongst your brothers. You bring maybe one or two others in, and it's that same thought process of, okay, we've exchanged letters back and forth. We've talked about it with different groups of the Pope and cardinals and whoever else is involved. Now we're escalating it beyond that and letting the wider church know, hey, this is an issue. This
Yeah.
needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. So talk about the incident that happened that led to the excommunication.
Yeah. So this most recent, so I mentioned the excommunication in 1988 earlier.
Mhm.
This most recent incident, those four bishops that were ordained have been dying off. They were down to two. And so in order to continue their society, they viewed a need to ordain more bishops. So their two remaining bishops have ordained more bishops to rule their society, or that might not be the proper phrasing, but to be in charge to manage their society.
Mhm.
And the reason that they need bishops is that they are a worldwide organization, and they need bishops in order to ordain priests to minister to their congregation across the world.
Right.
So their two bishops, one bishop presided, the other concelebrated the mass, and they ordained more bishops.
So the original four bishops that were originally excommunicated continued to practice,
Yes,
and
yes, that's right.
there was no further action between 88 and I guess 2026.
There have been letters, there have been discussions. Their group actually split in the early 2000s,
Hmm.
and one of the factions came back to the church, and they are now in order operating within the church. They do have permission to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass exclusively, but they signed a statement saying that they profess and believe everything that the Catholic Church believes and teaches, including Vatican II
Hmm.
and the Novus Ordo and the acceptance of that new rite. So
Interesting.
that would be the ideal end for the Society of St. Pius X, is they're folded back in and they're folded into that order, or they start their own. But yes, so there have been discussions. They Under Benedict XVI, they were particularly fruitful discussions, to the point where Pope Francis actually, you talk earlier about how he's a more liberal pope. However, he, in I believe it was 2016, stated that for the Jubilee Year of Mercy,
Mhm.
that their sacraments were valid again.
Hmm.
And then so that was supposed to be a time boxed. It's just for this year, but at the end of the year, he extended and said indefinitely sacraments are valid again.
Wow.
And so, I mean, we can get into the minutia here, but so their priests were validly ordained priests. So their masses were valid, but not licit. And we can get into the legal terms there. Valid just means that it was actually a celebration of the mass, versus licit means that it is legal. It is backed by canon law. It follows all of the rules for the normal Catholic Mass.
Right.
Interesting. So there would be exceptions. Is that a common thing for a parish to have exceptions where it's
Oh,
valid but
absolutely.
not licit? Oh, okay.
Absolutely. That's a very common thing, especially like when you get into the United States. Illicit mass follows the letter of the law. An illicit mass, they might take some liberties here or there, or they might um, mix in something that isn't necessarily in the book.
Mhm.
Um, so their masses were valid, but their masses were not licit. Their other sacraments are the ones that were at question. Their marriages, their confessions, their baptisms. Those were
Right.
the ones that were a question of validity.
Yeah.
Um,
So with licit and illicit, would it I mean, how much wiggle room is there? I guess would it just depend on the case, like the specific individual case?
I mean, typically, yes. So we have the Roman Missal. We have the general instruction of the Roman Missal. The Roman Missal is the rite of the Mass, how it is celebrated, what is to be said, when it's to be said, what order things fall in. That's
Mhm.
all written down. And then the general instruction of the Roman Missal instructs on how to licitly perform the Mass. And so, if all of that is followed to the letter of the law, to the letter that is written in the book, then it is licit.
So were they considered illicit because they exclusively did Latin mass?
No, that isn't actually. So the issue was their priests had been ordained without
Oh, okay.
permission from the local ordinary, from their local bishops.
Right.
So their priests, they received ordination from a validly ordained bishop. So it was a valid ordination. They do have the office of the priesthood behind them, but according to canon law, they're not supposed to be performing sacraments until they have permission from the Pope, until
Mhm.
everything is resolved.
Interesting.
So any sacraments that they perform, any masses that they perform are illicit but valid because they have the consecrated hands of the priesthood. But any sacraments they perform are not valid beyond the sacrament of the Mass or the
Gotcha.
sacrifice of the Mass.
So, but now that is no longer.
Yes. So with this excommunication at the start of the month, at the start of July of 2026, um, they no longer have that extended exception where they can validly perform sacraments.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting how the news cycle blows things up, and you just laid out this, well, 82, so what's that, almost 40 years ago,
Yeah, it's been
this,
going on for a little while.
yeah, this long controversy back and forth thing, but people read headlines that say X amount of people excommunicated by the Catholic Church and think it's like this heavy-handed thing.
Yeah,
That's
and
so interesting to
I mean, even amongst theologians, there are debates on whether it was heavy-handed or not.
really.
And yes, and largely the reason for that. So there's no question over these new bishops and the two bishops that ordained these new bishops. However, there are documents that were released, or letters that were released, that said we want to give a formal warning to the priests of the order We want to give a formal warning to the laity of the order. You should be well informed on the situation by now. You may incur excommunication upon yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a case by case if that is implemented. There is conflicting information on whether or not that has been implemented already, and that's something that the Vatican is currently working through, and they'll release a statement when they're ready. But we don't really know the end story there.
Yeah. I don't know. Just stepping inside the mind of a Roman Catholic, like, I could definitely see why the choice was made. The interesting thing to me was more why the choice was made for them to go forward with ordaining the bishops when they did, because it seemed like things were going kind of well, and a pope that may have taken more of what they have to say into account is I'm not in office, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's the timing is just interesting to me, but I guess is that just because, like, well, you said the bishops are getting old and all that, but they were getting old a couple of years ago too.
Yeah, that's true. I think they had one die recently, or relatively recently, and so there was a concern. So they have documents on the state of necessity, the state of emergency that the church is in, and that those documents, I would advise, if you want to know their side of the story more fully, you read those, because those outline why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
They argue, so that group that we were talking about earlier that split off from them and came back to the church and is now an order within the church, they viewed in the early 2000s, it was towards the end of John Paul II, towards the beginning of Benedict XVI, they viewed the state of necessity, the state of emergency, to have ended at that point.
Interesting.
So that's why they came back. But the Society of St. Pius X views it as an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're still operating the way that they are. They view the ongoing issue. They need bishops to keep ordaining priests and help their order to grow, or their society rather, to grow. And even they will say it's not ideal, the situations that they're operating in. But again, they view it as a state of emergency. They view it themselves as doing what they have to do right now.
So would they view, I guess this is a two-part question. If they would have communicated with the Vatican, is it possible that the Vatican would have allowed for them to ordain bishops? And I guess the other part of the question would be, is that why they weren't willing to communicate with the Vatican? If the answer to the first question is yes, then the second question would be, is that why they're not willing to communicate with the Vatican, because they still see it as a state of emergency? I mean, like, you think it would be easier for them to just, go along to get along, communicate with the Vatican, and get the bishops they need? I guess I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, or, well, I guess I'm calling Roman Catholics the devil in this analogy, but I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, that's a conversation for another day, I guess. But
yeah, that'll be part 2.
Yeah.
So, in order for the church to have granted them permission and assigned bishops to them, which is what would have happened, the church would have assigned bishops to them. They need to sign the same statement that this other branch had to sign.
Gotcha.
So they'd have to fully accept Vatican II and everything that came after, and they'd have to fully accept that the Novus Ordo is part of the church and part of the way that liturgy happens. Those are the norms for the liturgy. And that's something that they feel they can't accept.
Right.
So they really are basically at this point just they're trying to be schismatic.
Yes, yeah, and they're so yeah. I mean, there's no really no real skirting around it. Yes, they are trying to be schismatic, but they view themselves as preserving the Catholic tradition.
Right.
Sure, sure. But I
So
mean, like we
it's
said earlier, that's more or less what the reformers were trying to do, especially Luther. Like his whole thing was, "Hey, we got to stop indulgences," and the Pope at the time is like, "No, screw you, man."
yeah, and another
And
Catholic priest, I might add.
Yeah.
right, but at the end of the day, like that was his big thing. He was like, "Hey, this is a big issue. That this is not something that's advocated by Scripture," and he was like, "No, you got to stop." And it turns into a schism when it was never intended to be. Whereas these guys, like, I mean, they're just flat out saying like, "Nah, we're gonna do our own thing. Still call us, we
But
still say like we follow the Pope, but then like the Pope said this thing that I don't agree with, so whatever."
Yeah, and that's what and I sorry, I know Jake you want to talk, but that's what I see as kind of problematic with this group. Like I can see why a lot of people would sympathize with them, but at the same time, it's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, saying, yes, he holds the seat of Peter, he has this authority, and yet at the same time, we are
I'm only
not going
gonna
to listen to
recognize
him.
it when it's
Yeah.
convenient.
Yeah.
yeah, and it gets really complicated. I've tried to read their literature, and I've tried to understand some of their justifications, but it's really hard to understand how they're justifying going against the Pope and also saying, like, we believe and profess and follow the Pope.
Right.
Right.
So it is complicated. It is a very layered issue.
Yeah. And it puts, do you think they're going to lose a lot of their congregants through this? I mean, that's a, if, if the Vatican does go forward with excommunicating people who attend their masses, I guess you can't call them masses anymore.
Well, they
Um,
are still masses. They're still following the formula. They're still ordained priests. They're still valid masses. They're not licit, which is the same sort of situation as before.
so
It's
even
their
though
other
they're
sacraments that are not
excommunicated,
valid.
the mass is still valid.
Yes, because they are still following the proper formulas, and they are
Interesting.
still ordained priests.
Huh.
They are validly ordained priests. And unless they have specifically had the priesthood stripped from them, which they
I
haven't,
see.
they can still
So
celebrate Mass.
So they've not been defrocked, but they're
Correct.
excommunicated. So like
Correct.
you can't be part of our church, but you're still a priest.
so is there a world where I, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So okay,
It's
my
very
context is
complicated.
purely like Protestant, evangelical, like deeply. So like this is all like way
My
under my
context
head.
is Roman Catholic, and it's taken me a couple weeks to try to wrap my
Yeah.
head around
Right,
it. I
exactly.
still haven't. It's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to like wrap my brain around it and ask another question, but it's a tricky
Yeah.
one.
So the priesthood in the Roman Catholic Church, they act as an extension of Christ. They act in persona Christi, in the person of Christ.
Right.
Right.
A validly ordained priest that has not been defrocked still acts in persona Christi.
So I guess my question is there's still yet another step forward that the Vatican could go to I don't know if punish is the right word, but to
Yes.
discipline them.
Yes, there are several steps, and this is outlined in canon law, where there are several things that the church could do to discipline and to, I guess, separate more from this group. but neither side wants to separate. They both want to resolve, but they want to
Right.
resolve to different things.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
crux of the issue. Is
Yeah.
Well,
So
so like I know earlier we were talking about how like it's kind of hard to see, if they're being too heavy-handed or not heavy-handed enough. And I guess at the end of the day, they haven't gone full scorched earth on them.
yes.
Um, so yeah, okay,
I, something interesting to me, and I've been trying to think of a way to ask this question that makes sense. So there's a world where if they start excommunicating members of their congregation, there's a world where there is a valid mass being held, and yet if you attend to the valid mass, you get excommunicated, or is it just the sacraments, the other sacraments?
So the other sacraments are invalid. If you so the what's being proposed, what's being outlined, what's being discussed is if you profess allegiance to the
Gotcha.
society and you fully understand, you're fully aware of the situation.
Hmm.
Because there are people that are members of the society that don't necessarily know
Right. They were probably
the full
born
scope
into
of the
that.
situation. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And they were just raised. So the a good example of the attitude. So I used to work for a church that is near where I live, and also close to uh, this chapel, this Society of the Pius X church. They're very close in proximity to each other.
Hmm.
I had a guy come into the church and he was asking me, "Hey, what's the next mass time?" So I told him the mass time, and he was like, "Is this the Catholic Church, or is this the true Catholic Church?" And I said, "Yes, this is the Roman Catholic Church." And he said, "Well, what language is the mass set in?"
Mm.
And I said, "Well, we at this parish we have Spanish and English. At this other parish that's nearby, we have Latin and English. At this other church that's nearby, we have whatever." And he was like, "Okay, where is the true Latin church or the true Roman Catholic Church that only has Mass in Latin and not Latin and English?" And I was like, "Oh, you're talking about the Society of Pius X."
Yeah.
So there are some that are very contentious in that way, and that are, uh,
Schismatic.
yes,
Yeah.
and there are others that I don't think they know. I don't think they understand.
Yeah.
for the Protestant context of this, that would be like somebody coming in and asking if you use the authorized King James version.
Oh no.
What version
Oh,
of the
no.
Bible do you use?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good Protestant equivalent. Is what version do you use?
There's only certain flavors of Protestant that would. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, it's actually funny. I mean, Joe, you saying that made me think of it. We were just talking the other day about how Protestant kind of gets used sometimes by, especially some of the more like obnoxious Catholic apologists online. Protestant is almost used more as a slur than
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of
Don't
just want
worry.
to
They
clear
use
the air.
Lutheran in the same way.
Well, yeah. So it's just kind of funny. It seems like in today's vernacular, like Protestant is kind of just equivalated to or made equivalent to not Catholic.
Yeah.
And obviously like that's not all Protestants, quote unquote, are equal, as
Right.
far as, you have some people like Joe and I who obviously we would tend to lean more towards the Reformation, as influence, and therefore would be like more Protestant actual, versus some people that are just not Catholic and call it call
Yeah.
it okay.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
wide umbrella, and the problem is that, and this is changing, but the vast majority of quote unquote Christians, in especially in America, are very unserious, are not steeped in tradition, don't care about confessions or creeds, they just care about me, myself, and I in the Bible, which is not
Right.
at all what we can talk about the five solas and sola scriptura, and that's not what that means. Just to be clear.
Well, and it doesn't even work in a Catholic context either in that regard, because like, obviously the Catholic Church has no shortage of creeds and confessions for themselves.
Well, no, and
Mhm.
this is
And
what got us into this mess in the first place. It's just like
right.
this thought process of I do what I want, like it's my
Yeah,
truth, and
Right.
I will study the way that I study. That there are flaws there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's kind of an interesting thought too, is that they were kind of pushing back against modernism, but at the same time, it's almost like they have this expressive individualism.
Yes.
Like it's kind of a little bit hypocritical. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm off.
No, I'm
It's
following where you're
complex.
going with it
Yeah.
there. Well, and
It's
I
layered, and
mean,
that
through the course of this conversation, I've really been fascinated by, like, I guess, for one, it makes our situation in Protestant world not seem so rough. As far as
We're
just
not the only ones that fight.
yeah,
No.
have our own internal problems,
Yeah.
Well, and Protestants, Catholics, like we have been through worse than this across the course of history. Like there have been worse heresies than what we're
For
dealing
sure.
with now,
Yeah.
and
In recent memory, in fact.
Yeah.
Christianity has prevailed through it.
Oh,
Mhm.
So
indeed.
it is a
Well,
bump
and
in
at
the
the end of the
road.
day, like, all of this stems from the fact that there are people involved.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is kind of the worst problem to have.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's
You know?
when you get into the implementation of Vatican II. I would agree with them that some of the implementation was flawed, and it was
Right.
flawed because there were people involved. Like
Yeah.
the church and no church, no Christian church is immune to the influence of people.
Right.
Right.
So it isn't ideal,
Well,
but nothing here is. Nothing on this earth is going to be ideal. Nobody.
Yeah.
well, and there's always a difference of opinion on how things work, and different interpretations. Even stuff that's has a long-standing tradition is not immune to. I don't I don't know if that's right based on whatever. I mean, I'm thinking of, like, when we had Ray on last. Him talking about his experience at the OPC General Assembly,
Mhm.
and even he's like pushing back on a couple of things that were brought up, because, well, that doesn't really align with what we're saying we align with. And so, like, let's take a look at that, and maybe not just push it through blindly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think like the CNN article or whatever is going to say, "Wow, the Catholic Church did this huge mean thing and they're a bunch of bullies." But it seems like just like with the OPC and the General Assembly, like their process, we talked about their process on that podcast as well, and how it can be slow and monotonous, but I think it's good when you're making big decisions like excommunicating a lot of people to be slow. And I think in this case, as much as I hate to give the Vatican props, I mean, it seems like they were not heavy handed. It seems like it was methodical and slow. And honestly, it seems like the society kind of had it coming.
Yeah. Well, and the church is trying to be pastoral. The church doesn't
Mhm.
want them to turn away just because they have this stumbling block.
Right.
Because,
Right.
because the church realizes that um so like as an so the Catholic Church has the mindset of dogmas and doctrines, the things that we profess and teach. The magisterium is what we would call it,
Mhm.
Mhm.
is protected by the Holy Spirit, and it's guaranteed that it will not change through the ages because of that protection by the Holy Spirit. the law, which the liturgy and the way that the worship happens, as long as it is theologically sound, can change. You can have different flavors over time.
Mm.
And it is protected by the Holy Spirit, but not in the same way where it's not going to change.
Right.
And so when the liturgy changed with Vatican II, there were some things that weren't necessarily supposed to change that did.
Mm.
And the church realizes this, the church acknowledges this, but to say that it's all invalid and none of it is in line with the continuity of the church, that's false, because the theology didn't change. The theology is still there, it's still sound. It's just the flavor of worship is what changed.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know, Tyler brought up ecumenicalism, and we've talked quite a bit over the years. Obviously, you are my brother after all.
Yeah, we've talked a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of 2-hour phone calls or, walks around your
Sitting up
neighborhood.
until midnight or whatever.
Yeah.
Just normal stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it would be fair to paint you as more ecumenical than at least some church documents of the papist flavor would I'm sure you love that word, would suggest. I'm sure you already answered this question, but is that a huge problem with him? I can't remember if you answered that or not.
Yeah, so ecumenicism, or whatever the proper term is.
Yeah, I think it's ecumenicism.
Ecumenicism, whatever.
We know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The way that the church documents post-Vatican II outline the strategies is one of the things that they take issue with, yes.
So it'd just be strategies, not necessarily. And I guess the strategy would be more on the gracious side than the, I guess for lack of a better term, hellfire and brimstone side.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. The only other thing I'm really hung up on is not the point of this conversation at all. But so when you talk about someone getting excommunicated, and I guess you kind of already answered this, but from our perspective, like if our pastor got excommunicated, whether he was properly, we wouldn't typically use the word ordained, but I think it still fits within a Protestant context snugly. I don't have a problem with that word. When a pastor is properly ordained, if they're excommunicated, they're no longer qualified to be again, like we said, that like they're as a Gentile or a tax collector, they're outside of the kingdom. And I guess so from the Catholic perspective, would it be more that it's not about the person attending to the service, it's about the position?
For the celebration of the Mass, yes. It is Christ and the Holy Spirit acting through the person.
Mm-hmm.
And they can act through validly ordained hands.
Right.
Now, those priests aren't supposed to be celebrating Mass. That is part of the excommunication, is they're outside of communion with the church. They're not supposed to be celebrating a Mass.
Right.
So they can be, for lack of a better term, they could be punished under canon law for that. But again, the church is trying to be pastoral. The church isn't trying to rain hellfire and brimstone down on them,
mm-hmm.
because the church does want them to come back into the fold.
Gotcha.
And it's the same thing with the changes that weren't supposed to happen, that like the church hasn't gone back on those at this point, because there are people that are very emotionally attached to the way that the Mass happens today.
Yeah.
So they don't want to just outright throw everything out, like let's restart, because it's gonna turn people away, and those are issues of the law and not necessarily issues of doctrine or theology or dogmas.
Gotcha.
So they shouldn't be celebrating masses. They shouldn't be performing sacraments, and there's also a whole issue of jurisdiction. There's a mindset of jurisdiction in the church where you have to celebrate sacraments in a place where you have jurisdiction. The way that this normally works is if you have a priest that's assigned to a parish, he has jurisdiction over that parish. If he goes outside that if he goes into another church, he has to have permission from that pastor, because the pastor controls the jurisdiction. If he goes to another diocese, he has to get permission from the bishop in the diocese where he is.
Yeah.
So there is a thought process where, in the case of, they argue that yes, they are technically outside of jurisdiction
because they've been excommunicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they acknowledge this. They are technically outside of jurisdiction. However, there is a provision in canon law where the church provides jurisdiction in certain circumstances. And they argue that those certain circumstances that are spelled out in canon law apply to them.
And I'm assuming that's because of the state of emergency that they...
Yes. Yeah. And it all routes back to that.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And to be clear, I think maybe a Catholic listener or two may, with my last question, may be like, well, your pastors are sinful too. And it's like, well, yeah. And the point isn't that I was asking that question isn't that, there aren't even pastors that are not true Christians and going to hell and still pastors and, having services and everything. And I think the people in that congregation, as long as they are unaware of it, if they don't do anything about it, I don't think they're necessarily in the wrong. But if they are aware of it, if it's an openly, I guess the technical Catholic term would be schismatic, or if they're in sin and they get excommunicated, then that specifically was my question. I don't know why I had to go on that tangent just to clear that up, but
yeah, well,
I had to.
You bring up a good point. Pastors, priests, bishops, whatever level, whatever you're talking about, they're men. Men are sinful.
Yeah.
And so that's why the Catholic Church separates the idea of the person, the person of the priest, and the office he holds of the priesthood.
Right.
And so that gets into, that might answer your question a little more fully, is those are separate concepts, the office and the person.
Right.
And so that's why the masses are valid.
And ultimately, the part that I'm trying to kind of grapple with, and I think for Joe it's probably similar, just being able to separate out the doctrinal issue versus the kind of church law issue of it.
Yes.
And that's where, so like by church law,
I think we would call it like a primary issue versus a secondary or tertiary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so kind of to explain that a little bit, church law can change and can be developed. Doctrines, dogmas, the things that we teach, the things that we profess, those are unchanging throughout history.
Right.
Right.
But church law governs men. Church law only exists on earth because that's the only place that we need it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Church law, like we don't, once we enter heaven, you don't need law to govern you anymore because divine law governs you in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just interesting that obviously there's different terminology in general, but it's interesting because we have words for certain things that mean different things
Very
as well.
vastly different things
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. So I think that's the point where anytime any sort of Reformed person or just general Protestant talks to a Catholic, where you end up kind of talking past each other because you think you think you're telling the person a certain thing, but they're hearing it very different.
I maintain there is a lot of common ground between um, a Reformed person, a Protestant, and a Catholic, but terminology is often a stumbling block that we don't understand the terms that each other talks in.
Yeah.
There is, I mean, there are plenty of things we disagree on. There are plenty of things that any of the three of us would probably disagree on with all three of each other. But there is also a decent amount of common ground there, and we can't always find it because we don't talk in the same language.
Yeah, and we have actually Tyler, one of Tyler's pastors, has a podcast, and his co-host talks. I mean, what's his name again? Paul, great guy. Love you, Paul. If you ever hear this, but he, if I'm not mistaken, he's said on his podcast essentially like he doesn't think it's as big of it. Kind of what you just said. He doesn't think that the difference is as big as people make it seem. I think there are significant differences that are extremely important. Like, we have a lot of Presbyterians on this show. I disagree with Presbyterians on plenty. Polity, baptism, mode of baptism. But I think I don't know. I think there are definitely lots of Catholics that are going to heaven. No doubt. But the differences are more important, I would say, between someone like us and, well, you're here, so you.
Yeah.
And us and, say, a Presbyterian or something like that.
Right.
Well, because the differences are a lot more core, a lot more fundamental between like you and I and you and a Presbyterian.
Yeah.
So
like we would disagree with you in the same way the Presbyterian would disagree with you.
Yeah.
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 Right.
That's a good way to put it. But yeah, I guess we did say we're not going to debate on this show, so we'll have to save that for next time.
Well, and again, just like, when we've had various Presbyterians and even an Anglican, like we don't have to agree on everything to get along and to have fellowship and to even glorify God together. We may have different views on.
Oh, you're sounding like Pope Francis over there.
Yeah, right. We might have different views on what that looks like. And ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, like the best thing that we can do for one another is continue to pray for one another. That,
yes,
we're in every area that I might be incorrect, that the Lord would open my eyes. And in every area that you might be incorrect, that the Lord would open your eyes.
Yeah.
And absolutely,
because neither one of us would say we worship a dead God. Like we worship the true and living God, and therefore He's going to do living God stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm into that.
So,
yeah, and I wouldn't say the same things about a Mormon or a Muslim or a Jehovah's Witness, that there are Mormons and Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses that are going to heaven.
Yeah, well, and the goal of Christians should be the same. The goal should be get to heaven and point as many people in that direction as you can. Like that's the end goal of the Christian, is emulate Christ so that you can get to heaven and bring people with you. Like, we're all pulling in the same direction. It's just we don't necessarily agree on how we get there.
Right. What does that look like?
Yes.
Yeah.
What, and that prayer aspect that you bring up of praying for each other is vital. That's important.
Yeah.
Not all of us can be right at the same time. So
Right.
like,
I
well,
mean,
that's exactly it.
praying
I'm totally right. So
yeah,
Lord,
praying
make me
that
more like Joe.
praying for each other, and then praying for ourselves that our hearts can be softened and He can
Yeah.
mold them
Yeah.
and show us the truth, that capital T truth that we're all trying to work towards and build
Right.
towards.
Yeah. You better watch out. You might have some SSPX guys coming at you for saying something like that. That's you're being too ecumenical over there.
Yeah, probably. But that's, I mean, we're just trying to get to heaven and trying to grow and understand together.
Absolutely.
Well, so this comes up a lot. And it's probably not the first, and it probably won't be the last that we bring this up on this particular podcast. But it made me think of the very first question of the Westminster Catechism, and that is, what is the chief end of man? And the answer is, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can all agree that that is a good and lofty and noble goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And yes, if Jake's Catholic friends are listening to this, we do catechize our children as well. You're not the only ones.
just don't use your catechism.
Yeah. And Presbyterians, we don't use yours either. We just like that one answer. I'm just kidding.
No, they got some good
They
ones
got
in
some good
there.
ones,
They
yeah.
got some really good ones.
They do. I don't. I use good old Hercules Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Solid.
partial to the Heidelberg too.
Yeah, Pete would be proud.
Well, Jake, it has been fantastic talking to you. I hope we can have you back again. Maybe run some of our games with you. I think we'd have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to
Joe?
get a Catholic on the scoreboard, and that's he said Joe because it's my fault. I forgot about the games. We celebrated my oldest daughter's birthday tonight, so there's my
How
excuse.
dare you?
I know.
Yeah, you need to be more prepared next time. It's really unprofessional of you.
I know.
Listen, Jake, if anybody could say anything about this podcast, I don't think professional is one of the words.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. This has been the most professional experience I've had, other than Joe forgetting the games.
Right.
Had I remembered the games, this would be better than any of your corporate interactions at any of your jobs.
Oh, definitely.
Well,
Provided
Joe,
I haven't been made a schismatic or a heretic or whatever in anything I've said. I gotta have a couple priests listen and let me know where I went wrong.
I don't know if it'd be anything you said, but maybe just talking with us in general.
Yeah, not just because we're Protestants or whatever, just because it's us.
It's because it's us. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some friends that want to meet Joe and give him the same trouble.
Yeah. As much trouble as I've given you, I deserve it.
Yeah. I don't know. We all deserve a little bit of trouble in life.
Yeah. All in love, right?
Yes. Sorry, I interrupted your outro.
Well, no, you're good. You're good. Joe, I was going to ask you if somebody wanted to find more about us online, where would be the best place to turn?
I'm so glad you asked, because it's so easy, Tyler.
Is it?
You have to type 4 letters, x.com.
That's 5 keys.
That's 5 keys, but it's only 4 letters. I thought about that. I was going to say 5, but it's 4 letters. All right. I wasn't technically wrong. And then you're going to want to go over to that search bar and type in @overtheologizer. Is that how they do it? Is there a search? I don't know Twitter yet, guys.
There's a search bar.
There's a search bar. Go to the search bar. So professional. Go to the search bar, type in @overtheologizer. You can go check out our page there. You can tag us. Maybe you can ask questions. Maybe we could have a Catholic question cast next time Jake comes on, if we get some listener questions in there. And by the way, Tyler, I don't know if you listened to the last pod, my solo pod, but I did coin our listeners as over theologizers. So that's what we're calling them. That's what
I'm
they are
about
now.
it.
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
So yeah, over theologizers.
All 5 of you.
Yeah. Hey, we have more than 5 unique listens, sir. All right. It's 6. No. Yeah, at overtheologizer on Twitter. You can email us at overtheologizing@gmail.com. Any questions, again, any guest suggestions. And hey, we've had a couple of people email us about being a guest. Maybe more on that in the future. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, if you have something interesting in the works, or maybe you're a scholar on SSPX or some sort of thing. Oh, we already talked about that. Maybe something else. Email us. And also, Jake, if
Yes,
you were
sir.
to rate this podcast on any podcast catcher, they're on. It's on all of them. What would you rate it? 1 out of 5 stars.
I mean, obviously 4.9.
4.9 is a solid number. I'll take it.
I gotta dock you a little bit just because Catholic.
No
I have
games.
to.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
maybe I should go down a little bit more. Maybe it's a half a point for. Maybe it's a half a
Catholic
point for the games.
4.9 is a respectable number. I will take it.
We're patting ourselves on the back right now. And Tyler, what do they do if they want to rate it 1 star?
Well, see, I've noticed a lot of these podcast catchers, they do this weird thing where if you want to rate it 1 star, you got to hit that one that's all the way over on the right, and it'll light up all of them. That's a bug. It's a glitch.
It's a visual
Don't worry
bug.
about it. You're only clicking 1 star, so therefore you're only rating it 1 star. But it's that one on the right. Trust.
Yep. It's how you do it, guys.
Trust me, bro.
Go do it.
I was a software engineer for years. I can confirm that is the way that the UI works.
He is certified. You guys thought this was a joke the whole time. It's not.
I don't look into the certifications too closely, but
hey,
you were employed.
Like I said, source, trust me, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, it has been fantastic sharing the evening with you. Jake, I hope you have a wonderful mass tomorrow, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
It
how to
hurt
properly...
him so much to say.
It was weird. It was weird. Joe, have a good Lord's Day.
Tag West Huff.
There you go. Yeah.
Tag
everybody,
West Huff.
Stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Tag West Huff on Twitter or x.com, whatever.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.